Hello, everyone, and welcome back to my channel. I am the Night Walker, and tonight I want to talk about, a ghost story that I don't know if too many people really reviewed this movie or not. I think Rambo Rap for Life, I think he did this years ago, and maybe a couple of other people, but this is a movie I really, really enjoy, and this was a movie. Okay, this movie came out not too long after Blair Witch Project, and even Fangoria magazine, and even in the movie itself, they admitted that this was basically a cash in on Blair Witch Project. And so I went into this movie with extremely low expectations. Didn't think this movie was going to be any good at all, but I was actually very pleasantly surprised by it. And the movie we're talking about is the St. Francisville Experiment. Now you're wondering, why do I have it in a little white envelope and not in its proper DVD case? Because before, yada yada yada, you lived in a small space, didn't have room for the DVD cases and the box art and stuff. Had to get rid of them, put my DVDs in the CD wallets, and so whenever I come across this, in the CD or the DVD case again, I definitely plan to pick this back up and get it back into my collection. So, but anyway, for right now, this is what I got, and it's better than not having it at all. So, okay, now that we explain that. Like I said, this movie in Fangoria magazine, they admitted that this was a Blair Witch Project cash in because Blair Witch was a big hit. And, I'm not going into the whole, oh, well, Blair Witch wasn't even the big thing because they took that off last broadcast. Blah, 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 blah. I'm not going into that right now. We're talking about this movie. So they admit it, even in the movie, they admit, have you seen Blair Witch, and stuff like that. So the movie it is aware that it is a cash in of Blair Witch Project, but you know what? That doesn't automatically do this movie in. I will say though, if you are not a fan of found footage movies and the kind of camera POV movies, if you're not a fan of those movies, then I'll tell you right off the bat, you're not going to care for this movie. I promise you that much. But if you don't mind those kind of movies, actually, I admit I never thought I would become one, but I'm actually one of those kind. I do like a lot of the found footage movies. A lot of them when they're done well and it's interesting. Now, that's not to say I haven't come across some real, stinkers in my time, but this one here I actually do enjoy. The story, is actually it's kind of loosely based on the true story of Madame LaLaurie and a New Orleans society. She and her husband, they, you can find all kinds of stories about it, but she was known for keeping slaves, and even when they took her slaves away from, because she had had a reputation of being terrible to her slaves, but people didn't know how terrible she was to her slaves. That at one point the law even tried to take her slaves away from her, but she had relatives, kind of under the table, buy her slaves back. And then she ended up, living in this house on the quarter. And sorry, but it was revealed that her and her husband, they were torturing these slaves. They had, like in the attic, they would sorry, dry throat. But like they would keep the slaves in cages. Like one of them, it's explained like one of them, the arms and legs were bent around and broken to where I think it was a little boy looked like a almost like a crab monster or something like that. There was a slave chained to the kitchen stove, and their job was to eat, sleep, by the stove and cook meals at all times of the day or night, things like that. There was hints that she was trying early attempts at sex change operations and just all kinds of diabolically dastardly deeds and things like that. And one thing that's really fun is if you know your history on this stuff, and then you turn around and watch, I believe season 3 of American Horror Story, where Kathy Bates played Madame LaLaurie. Oh yeah, it's ghoulish delight for horror fans. But anyway, though, so in this movie, though, the idea is that she, in real life, yes, she found out that that the law was they. Let me back up. Sorry about this. The slave who was tied to the or chained to the stove decided to go ahead and set fire to the house because just did not want to have to keep living in the conditions of which they were living, so decided to set fire to the house. And when the fire broke out, and then fire department come and police come, they're going to put out the fire. Well, LaLaurie knows that they're going to find out about her torture chamber in the attic and what she'd been doing to all these slaves and children and things like that. So her and her husband, they and or I don't think it was the husband, it was her and the coachman. They load up her coach as fast as they can, and they manage to beat it out of there before she gets caught by the police. And they're saying in this movie that there's a kind of a plantation in St. Francisville that she came to and pretty much lived out the rest of her life, and she died there, and they think her spirit still haunts this plantation and things like that. So this guy at the beginning of the movie, he's kind of a narrator, but he says, I'm very much a believer in the paranormal, and a fan of horror, and I want to find out, is there anything to this? But the thing I think is funny is it's one of the few times where somebody's all like, yeah, I'm really invested in this and I really want to get in there and find out what's going on. But you know what? I'm not going to go in there. I'll just send other people in to do it for me. So that was kind of the one thing I thought was kind of funny. Was that, he's all talking about he really, really wants to find out the true story. He wants to get to the bottom of this and everything else. But he's just going to send other people in to do it for him. I think that's kind of funny. So we have our four main characters. We have the leader, Paul, who okay, I have to admit the acting is not really that bad. I've seen, found footage movies where the acting is significantly worse. It's not Oscar caliber, but then again, too, it's not the most atrocious acting I've ever seen. But you have Paul, who's the leader, and he said, he's growing up. He's had his own paranormal experiences, and he wants to get into, chasing the paranormal, things like that. Then you have Madison, who's the clairvoyant, and her and Paul kind of butt heads a lot throughout the movie because they're kind of like always fighting for control. And Madison does tend to get a little anxious. So it's kind of like the two of them. I mean, they respect each other and everything, but then there are moments in the movie where they do have some conflict. You have this pretty blonde girl, Ryan, who's like the historian. She's more about like looking into the history and trying to see if any of the evidence, that they find kind of coincide with what happened in history and things like that. And then you got Tim, who's kind of like the filmmaking student, kind of the videographer. And, his whole thing is he's like, I don't believe in ghosts, but I'd like to believe in them. And, it'd be kind of great if we do go in there, we find something, it'd be neat. So, they kind of get the backstory. They get taught on how to use, paranormal hunting, gear and things like that. And then the four of them go into the house. And then I'm going to give a little bit of spoiler, so spoilers. But they get into the house and it's kind of creepy and moody and atmospheric and things like that. And then they go in, they start searching the rooms, and they got some good fun back and forth. They kind of gel well, these four characters. But like I said, there is some conflict, and they're looking around. And one thing I have to admit, like I said, when I first watched this movie, I was not expecting anything good to come of it. But I have to admit, the part where when they're looking through the house, and of course they see like cockroaches in the kitchen, things like that, just creepy, gross things. But when they go into that attic and you see that chair just fly across the room like that, that made me jump. I have to admit, I was like, all right, man, I'm on board now. This is cool, because that was kind of the thing, like, wow, this does what Blair Witch did. In Blair Witch, you don't really see anything. This is showing you some stuff. So, as they progress, they start, checking out the house, and, they decide at one point they're going to like do a seance, with a Ouija board. That doesn't go very well, as you can imagine. They keep finding all these, things like they're finding, stuff under the bed, and they're finding, like stuff in the closet and things like that. And then as the night goes on, it gets progressively worse. I don't want to tell you the whole thing, but yeah, there are some really, really good scary moments in this. And then, like at one point they decide, Madison says the best thing for them to do is separate and do a cleansing ritual and clean up the whole house. So they go, Paul decides as the leader, he'll take the upstairs. Then there's like, the place is like 3 or 4 stories or something like that. And then, Ryan, I think she's going to be on the first floor. Madison's on the second. Paul is up at the top. And I think, Tim, I think he's going to be more like in the basement area, I think. And so, they have their, their sage and things like that, and they're going to try to cleanse the house and everything else. And then when they do try to do it, all hell breaks loose, and it's, incredibly freaky and scary and stuff. And, this movie is very well done. I was very pleasantly surprised by this. And, like I said, I don't want to give too much of the ending away, but like, oh man, like one part I thought was particularly creepy, like just spooked me really good, was when Madison is turning, she's like got her camera facing the mirror, and she's talking about, we're trying to help you, we're trying to clean the house, you don't have to stay here, your spirit can move on. And this, gnarled, grisly hand reaches up and grabs her. She turns around, and she gets attacked and everything else, and so yeah. So like I said, I don't want to give too much of it away, but I don't want to sit here and describe it all beat for beat and line for line. It's like give you some surprises to go see this movie, but really, if if you like movies about the paranormal and ghost hunting, and you don't mind the found footage thing, if you don't like found footage movies, don't even bother. But if you like good found footage movies and with interesting characters, and the dynamic is a little bit different but still kind of fun, I would definitely say, yeah, watch this movie. Like I said, I really went into this with no expectations whatsoever, and I was very happy with it. Very happy with it. I do like this movie, and I've watched this movie a number of times, so it's fun. I like it. So anyway, but yeah, so hopefully that'll do it. So if anybody took the time to watch the video, I thank you for doing it, and I appreciate you for doing it. I also hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please like and subscribe. There'll be weekly videos posted. Um, yeah, until then, you better be careful, because if you're out walking at night, you might see me walking around, because I am the night walker. Good night.